Well, hello there. I hope you're having a good day, campers. That would make one of us. This is Dave, Nerd Emperor, and I am not having a good day, and honestly, y'all are going to hear a lot about it today in the 30th episode of Season 1, because you're damn right we're going to have Season 2 and beyond, of the War, Sports, Politics, and Dragons podcast. I do hope you're having a good day. I'll tell you about what's happened with mine, but suffice to say, somebody is about to get chewed. But we'll get into that later. For now, let's go ahead and do the standard stuff because, as always, whenever we start, I got to read this stuff here because, whatever. Anyway, as always, you can follow us on not just Spotify, where we began, but on Amazon, Audible, and iHeartRadio as well. Meanwhile, if you want to help us get better tech, you can donate through Cash App and Venmo. Our handle is the same on both. It's WSPD Pod. We have a Patreon page for subscribers to sponsor us. It's as cheap for you guys as little as $3 a month for premium content. Patreon.com/WSP Dragons. 8 chapters of my first completed novel, Love's Crucible, are on there now. The 9th chapter will go up tomorrow, I believe it is. And you can read the first one for free to get a taste. It starts in 1992 with some schmuck who gets a random phone call, and we'll just say that somebody dared me to write something based on a certain thing, and I wrote something based on a certain thing, and you'll see what it is if you read the whole thing. But give it a shot. Patreon.com/WSP Dragons. Just $3, and you can support a writer who's been writing his whole adult life, literally since I was 18 years old. But enough of that. It is time for the show. We're starting with war because, well, that's the first name in the podcast. First word. The ceasefire between American and Allied forces, because it's not just the Israelis involved now, is continuing. It's a 2-week hiatus, at the beginning of which oil prices dropped something like $30 a barrel. We'll see whether or not that's reflected at the pump. But folks, remember, the oil prices that you're looking at, if you go onto a website that shows you what the market rate for a barrel of oil is, it's for May contracts. So that's stuff that hasn't even been pumped out of the ground yet. So what's going to happen is the prices are still going to go up because there's a 1-month lag between the price spike at the oil well and the price spike at the pump. However, there will also be a lag between it going up once it's down, but it's the old rocket feather thing. Price always seems to shoot up like a rocket, but then it drops like a feather. I wish that we didn't deal in the world oil market, but we do for now. However, we'll see. Maybe that conspiracy theory about depleting the Arabs' oil so that then we can corner the market is a true fact. But the problem is, Americans would probably still pay a high price for oil because the oil companies are in it to make money, and that's, the nature of the beast. It's not a failing of capitalism. It's not a bug. It is a feature. However, there are people making good money, and I got to level with you, man. I don't think I could do some of the jobs that are done in the oil companies. Being a roughneck on an oil rig? Oh, God, no. It might pay $225,000 a year, but I am in nowhere near the condition for that. And these guys go through something. But anyway, the ceasefire is continuing. There are supposed to be talks between the Trump administration and the IRGC tomorrow in Pakistan. We will see. Personally, you know what I think about things, and if you don't, well, I think that we should keep going until we get rid of the IRGC and establish a new regime in Iran. And for those of you that don't like that, I patently don't give a crap, okay? All right, you like terrorism, I don't. That's what makes us different. Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, all sponsored by the IRGC. Beirut, 1983, 241 Americans dead. IRGC-sponsored Hezbollah attack. All the different hijackings and crap going on around the world for decades, a lot of it has been sponsored by the IRGC. They are the leading state sponsor of terrorism. They need to be dead. Every single one of them. The Iranian people hate them. They're ambushing them at checkpoints now. The Iranian people are slowly starting to rise up, but they still need our help. And the time will come when they will be free, and I'm going to look back, and to all the doubters and all the haters, well, screw you. All right, moving on into sports. Going to talk real quick about the Baltimore Orioles. They just finished up a 3-game sweep in Chicago of the Southside boys, the White Sox. But the White Sox are one of the 4 worst teams in baseball, And I saw an interesting statistic a couple of weeks ago. Now, the White Sox have been around since, I want to say 1899. I'm probably wrong on that. I know they've been around since before the American League, I think, was officially established in 1901. But now take that into context, and I think I might have talked about this on a previous podcast, actually, but the White Sox have scored fewer runs in the postseason than either the Tampa Ray Devil Bays, there you go, the Tampa Bay Rays, or the Arizona Diamondbacks. Both of those teams actually joined the league 28 years ago. So Chicago has not been a consistently good baseball team. Actually, the Cubs or the White Sox have not had good, strong runs of multiple years for quite some time. And for the Orioles to sweep them, they'd better. Okay, so the Orioles have righted the ship to a degree. They're 6-6, and they start a 3-game set. I believe it's a 3-game set at home tonight against the San Francisco Giants. I thought they were going to San Francisco, but I forgot. Today is April 10th, and it's 410 day, 410 being the area code for much of Maryland, including Baltimore. It was originally 301. When I was a kid, that was our area code, but then they added 410, and they've added 240 and 443 and a bunch of other area codes. I think 667 is one of the area codes that is also used in Maryland now. But anyway, today's 410 day, and the Orioles, along with several other teams, have announced their new City Connect uniforms, where it's a new color scheme and logo, and the shirts say "Be More." I'm going to just go ahead and say this. I've never been one to buy name brands. I don't believe in paying money to advertise somebody else's shit. Okay? I'm not paying money to be an advertisement for Tommy Hilfiger or for the Baltimore Orioles. I did wear at one point some Dallas Cowboys stuff, but then I got so disillusioned with the team after years of frustration because the temperature in summer is like the Dallas Cowboys, peaking in the 90s. And I got tired of announcing that I was a fan of a team that perennially disappointed me. And to be honest, the fans are loyal, but the players aren't. Okay, how many times have you heard somebody sign a contract with a pro team and say, oh, well, these guys, this team has the greatest fan base in the world. And then they'll sign with another team a couple years later. Oh, well, this is the greatest fan base around to come here. I'm really happy to be in insert name of city. So they're just, they're in it to make money. Some of them are in it for the love of the game, but the overwhelming predominance of opinion is that they want to make money doing it. They're professional ball players. Lord knows I saw enough of that daddy ball crap when I was a sports writer covering youth sports to see that the parents push a lot of these kids into sports. And someday I'll tell you the story about one kid at one school, whom I won't name when I tell the story, who looked like he was just going through the motions to shut up his family because he was the youngest of his family playing for the high school team. And to be honest, he looked about as uninterested in what he was doing as Roger Moore did in his last James Bond film. But anyway, the Orioles are 6-6. The Giants are coming to town. They're okay. I don't think they're doing great. Let me pull up the Major League standings real quick, and I can tell you where they are. If I'm not mistaken, I think the Giants are one of 3 teams in the National League West that started the season 0-3. I may be wrong about that. Of course, the Dodgers started 3-0 because, they're the Dodgers, the Yankees of the West Coast, basically. But let's look at the National League standings real quick. Okay, the Giants are 5-8, and they're dead last. So no, they're not setting the world on fire. 3-7 over their last 10. Whereas Baltimore, I want to say, is 5-5. Does that sound right? Yeah, Orioles are 5-5 over the last 10. The Orioles are actually in second place, 2 games behind the Yankees, who are 8-4. And that'll be a close race until the Yankees get their latest delivery of Dominican Republic B12 shots. And then the artificially enhanced team will go ahead and go on to bigger and better things. We'll see if the Orioles can turn in a respectable performance over the weekend. I don't know. If they take 2 out of 3 from the Giants, that'll be a glimmer of hope. If they lose 2 out of 3 or get swept, then I'm going to level with you. I'm probably going to write them off. because I think what they have on paper should be better than what San Francisco has on paper. And they're playing at home against them. Of course, the DH is no longer a factor in these games since the National League has now gone with the designated hitter too. We've had a discussion about that. I'm in favor in principle of the DH. The nostalgia of watching pitchers bat was cool, but it took a lot of strategy out of the game. And I don't want to hear this, well, there's strategy because you got to pinch hit for your pitcher. And who do you use? Well, that's the problem, is it's wasting personnel. Okay, everybody knows that you have two things that are going to happen when a guy who's batting .050 comes to the plate with a runner on base and one out. One of two things will happen. Either he's going to lay down a bunt, or they're going to pull him and put in somebody else to hit. Okay, that's not strategy. Everyone knows it's coming. That's not a strategic move. Okay? But anyway, talking about bigger and better things, we're going to move on. So we'll reserve judgment on the Orioles for a few more days. I am glad that they're 6-6. They're getting it halfway right, which is a little bit more than the Pope has managed to do. What is going on inside Vatican City where I got to look. I got to pull this up real quick because I still can't believe that the Pope actually said this. And, of course, the current Pope is the first American Pope, and naturally, they've picked another socialist. Oh, yeah. So, anyway, here's Leo the 14th saying, well, let me put it to you this way. It makes me worry when I see something the Pope says. Now, I'm not Catholic. I will tell you the story about how I almost became Catholic here very, very shortly in the podcast. I'm not Catholic, but I gotta tell you, it worries me when I see things like this coming from the Archbishop of Rome, which is the actual official position that the Pope holds in the hierarchy, I'm told. For him to say something like this, which makes me think, I don't know if the guy's ever cracked a Bible open. God does not bless any conflict. Anyone who is a disciple of Christ, the Prince of Peace, is never on the side of those who once wielded the sword and today drop bombs. Sorry, I had to look something up real quick. Military action will not create space for freedom or times of peace, which comes only from the patient promotion of coexistence and dialogue among peoples. Yeah, let's talk real quick, Pope Fred, because I don't know what your real name is, and I don't really care. So we're going to call you Fred for the purpose of this, because apparently your last name is Flintstone, and you exist in a time that predates the events of the Bible, because the Bible has all kinds of things in it about war that you seem to have not noticed in your many years in the priesthood. We'll get to those in a second, but first we're going to tell you the story about how Dave almost became Catholic. Okay, back in the late 80s, 88, 89, as Reagan turned into Bush for father, I was friends with some people that lived in a town nearby who were Catholic, and they were the traditional Catholics, not the Novus Ordo Catholics as they're known to some. These are the people who would drive from the Eastern Shore of Maryland to a particular church in Washington, D.C. several times a year because they insisted on taking Mass in the original Latin. Okay? These were traditional Catholics, as they call them. And I heard stories about Vatican II and the alleged schism and all that, and we won't get into all that because that's something that's 35 years removed, as is the rest of this story. But I went through a good deal of catechism, brought home the Baltimore Catechism books, and studied them, and went to Mass, and, was involved in the family saying the rosary, and I probably still have my rosary around here somewhere. And they gave it to me, these folks that were friends of mine who were Catholic, and it had a drop of water that was, I forget if it was from Lourdes or where it was, but it was a drop of holy water in the one piece at the center of the rosary. But I had some stuff happen that tested my faith, and basically they turned their back on me. So I said, well, if this is what it's about, then I don't think I want to do this. This is not my cup of tea. And my mother said something about Catholicism that resonated with me. And I'm not really knocking the Catholic Church, because deep down there are good things that every organized faith has done. Don't get me wrong about that. But my mom once said that as a Catholic, it's great because you can do what you want. All you have to do to take care of it later is brag to a stranger on Sunday. Now, I was saved in 1998, and I have a slightly different viewpoint about sin and about salvation. And I want to thank my dad and my stepmother, Donna, for their help in getting me saved. But back to the Pontifex. Sir, we got to have a little chat. Exodus 15:3, the Lord is a man of war, the Lord is his name. Deuteronomy 20, verse 4, for the Lord your God is the one who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies to give you victory. And I got to look one up real quick. And if we're talking about Jesus, the Prince of Peace, let's not forget the first book of the New Testament, Matthew chapter 10, verses 34 to 36. This is from the English Standard Version. This is just what happened to pop up. I didn't type in KJV in the search engine, so it's not from the King James. Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. Okay? Christ himself said that. 1 Samuel, back in the Old Testament, chapter 15, verse 3. Now go attack the Amalekites and totally destroy all that belongs to them. Do not spare them. Put to death men and women, children and infants, cattle and sheep, camels and donkeys. Now, there's a list here. There's Numbers. King David in the Psalms. Psalms have several mentions of God and war and God's condoning of war. And we won't get into that. But Jeremiah also talks about it. So for the Pope to say this, you're just plain wrong. You're just wrong. You're absolutely incorrect. Okay? And to me, and I replied to the Pope's account in English directly on Twix and said, it sounds like the Holy Church owes somebody a ton of money from the sale of indulgences then, huh? Can we talk about the Inquisition? Is this a parody account? Because I got to level with you. I don't see how anyone claiming to represent the largest Christian denomination on earth can say such a thing that sounds so completely at odds with and ignorant of what is actually written in the primary reference source for the faith. I just can't wrap my brain around that. And in light of the Crusades and the thousands of times that indulgences, like I said, were sold. For those of you that don't know what an indulgence is, basically an indulgence was a writ issued by the Catholic Church that you paid them for, unless you were a peasant serving in a Crusader army. But if you were a high mucky muck, if you were one of the princes or dukes or one of the leaders of the crusade, there was a financial consideration exchanged for this. And what an indulgence was a permission slip saying, as long as it's done in the furtherance of the crusade and the Holy War, any acts you commit are forgiven, up to and including murder. The Catholic Church not only issued these indulgences, they not only condoned violence in the name of the church, they took money to give people get-out-of-hell-free cards for it. So, yeah, it's nice to know, though, that I can just basically disregard anything else the Pope has to say because he's not a serious person. And I'll just say it that way. I have friends that are Catholic, and I have nothing against them, and we're not going to get into a liturgical debate. I'm just saying that I can no longer take this Pope seriously. And we'll just leave it at that. We won't discuss the sexual abuse payouts and the billions of dollars that just the United States dioceses and archdioceses all over the country have paid to people who were abused by priests. We won't discuss any of that because that's happened in other churches too. But, some people corner the market on it. Moving on, I guess maybe we should just talk it out with the Nazis. Is that what he's saying? In 1942, we should have just talked it out with Hitler? Okay, whatever. Well, at least it's not the Swiss who laundered money for the Nazis lecturing us on peace. It's just the Pope who turned a blind eye to what the Nazis did to the Jews in Rome. Okay. Anyway, moving on to the Dragons portion of the podcast. And by the way, the longest segment today is going to be anecdotal evidence because I got a story to tell you, and then I've got a story to tell you. But moving on to Dragons, into the role-playing and gaming world, real quick news is that it looks like there is going to be a new Star Trek series, and it appears from what the rumors are floating about telling us is that it will be Star Trek United. And what that basically is, in a nutshell, is a series that may or may not star Scott Bakula from Star Trek Enterprise, who played Captain Jonathan Archer in that show, which ran 4 seasons from, I want to say, 2000 to 2003. And there was this adorable beagle in it named Porthos. But anyway, Star Trek United is going to focus on the infancy of the United Federation of Planets, apparently, and it will involve politics and intrigue. And from what I'm hearing, Alex Kurtzman, who was the man behind New Trek and the absolute dumpster fire that was Starfleet Special Ed Learning Academy, retards in space, basically, is not affiliated with this. So I'm actually going to be cautiously optimistic about Star Trek United and hope that it doesn't turn into an absolute shit show, which is what Special Ed was. And I'm still telling you right now, I just don't think that Season 2 of Starfleet Special Ed Academy is going to see the light of day. I still don't think it's going to be released. If it does get released, it's going to have crappy numbers, just like the other ones, because now we're hearing reports that the show averaged fewer than 40,000 viewers per episode. Okay? 40,000 viewers worldwide after days and weeks of being available from the company that owns the intellectual property, Star Trek. 40,000 viewers. To put that into proper context, if that had been a sitcom airing on a Wednesday night, even in a bottom-of-the-hour time slot, that show would not have lasted 3 episodes. If the numbers were that low, that in the industry is what is called a scratch. They're not going to keep that. The fact that it did so poorly on its own proprietary platform, it wasn't even competitive in terms of putting it up against the best shows from other streaming services like Netflix or Peacock or any of the other Prime, any of the others. It couldn't crack the top 10 on just Paramount Plus as the season went on. I think after about the 4th episode, it never saw the top 10. It was getting outviewed by cartoons and reruns of 20-year-old sitcom Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Okay, it was garbage, but let's hope that Star Trek United does better. If Star Trek United turns into crap, then I got to level with you. I think that will be the absolute and final nail in the coffin burying the Star Trek franchise. Okay, I did find it ironic that Bill Shatner, the star, of course, of the original series, Captain James T. Kirk was his role, came out in defense, kind of defense of Star Trek Special Learning Academy, but then admitted publicly and repeatedly that he had never watched a single episode, but that he's never watched any Star Trek. So that doesn't totally surprise me, and I tell you why, is because he's an actor and he's paid to play pretend, and he doesn't need to see himself or other people playing pretend in similar roles because he just doesn't choose to. So, whatever. A little bit surprised, but, it happens. Anyway, into Dragons proper, and we're going to talk about D&D, the 30-day D&D challenge, day 4. What is your favorite game world, which is basically a setting where the adventures you take part in take place? In my opinion, it would be the world I created, Trinith, which you're going to learn more about as time goes on, especially if you're a Patreon sponsor, hint, hint. But if I had to pick one that was produced by TSR, I'm not even including Wizards in this, because Wizards, I don't think, has actually created any new worlds. They've just taken the old IP and run with it, and they've proceeded to run it into ground with D&D woke version. I would have to go with the world of Greyhawk. That was the original world as created by Gary Gygax. Then Dave Arneson, a co-creator of D&D, had Blackmoor, and Blackmoor, as I recall, was actually added into the world of Greyhawk. If I'm not mistaken, it's in the northern section of the map. I might be wrong about that. It's the Land of Black Ice is where I'm thinking of, but I might be wrong. But in any event, I would go with Greyhawk if I had to pick a favorite game world. Back in the mid to late 90s, on America Online, they had different chat boards and groups, and I was very active in the Dungeons and Dragons chat, and there was a World of Greyhawk Online fan club, and I was the gaming editorial columnist for said fan club, and wrote half a dozen pieces about the game world. And one of them was Where Do I Begin? And it talked about various locations that you could start your adventures in Greyhawk. And my favorite place to start was in the Kingdom of Furiandi, which was in the western part of that area, along the border of the lands of Ayuz, who is an evil demigod. If you go north, you head into the lands of Ayuz, and if you go south, you will find yourself eventually, if you go the right way, in the city of Greyhawk. And I actually ran a campaign in 96, 97 that was one of my favorite campaigns that I ran, where I told them they were headed to the campaign, and to do so they had been hired to guard a caravan that went from Furiandi to Greyhawk City, and they had the campaign on the way to the adventure, basically. I threw them into the world of Ravenloft a couple of times. They had a blast, and by the time they got to Greyhawk City, they were all around 9th level, which was what was called name level back in first edition D&D, where it's kind of the sweet spot where you feel like you can accomplish the most. It's the most fun and most challenging at the same time. So anyway, if I had to go with my favorite game world, it would be my world, the world of Trinith. And then if I had to go with one that was mass-produced, it would be Greyhawk. And then behind that, probably Ravenloft, which was the horror setting. But if I had to pick a horror role-playing game to play, I would probably go with Call of Cthulhu, and then maybe with 3rd edition Ravenloft. But anyway, moving on to anecdotal evidence. Part 1, the Elks Lodge Road Insanity of 1988. Okay, picture this, folks. A 1980 Toyota Celica. It's beat up, it's got some mileage on it, it's seen some years, but it runs great. And it's got one of those, I think it was called a moonroof, where you would turn the crank and the roof would open and retract in one section. Well, it was a 5-speed. I loved driving that stick. That was my second car. My first car was a 1980 American Motors Company Spirit. It was a little silver thing, looked a little bit like a Gremlin. And the Spirit was a 4-speed, but the Toyota Celica was a 5-speed, and it had a little bit of ass to it, actually. I just never really pushed the car. But it was technically a semi-sports car that Toyota offered. It was my mom's, and she handed it down to me when she got, I believe it was a Cutlass Sierra. But one night, I'm hanging out with my best friend at the time, Rich, and for whatever reason, we find ourselves on Elks Lodge Road outside of Cambridge, Maryland. Now, just east of Cambridge, off of westbound Route 50, is the road that'll take you to the local Elks Lodge. I actually, one summer, Rich and I spent time there doing lifeguarding in exchange for free admission to the pool. So we got to go to the Elks Lodge pool that whole summer, and all we had to do was be lifeguards once or twice a week. So we did that. And one night we're on Elks Lodge Road. Rich and I didn't really drink much. It turned out Rich smoked pot, and I didn't even know it. I was so naive about drugs and still am. But Rich had an idea I'm blaming him. It might have been my idea, but this sounds like something Rich would suggest, because I was always the safe one. The next thing I know, it's raining. It's not pouring ass raining, but it's raining. It's a steady drumbeat of rain. And I'm on the roof of my own car. Now, the Elks Lodge Road is approximately 1 mile exactly in a straight line until you get to the parking lot of the Elks Lodge off of 50. Rich is driving. And not only is he swerving the car recklessly in an attempt to shake me off the roof, he's putting his hand in my face through the moonroof to try to distract me and make me lose my grip. Well, over the better part of an hour, we took turns doing this. And to this day, I cannot figure out what in the hell possessed us to decide to do that as a pastime. Imagine if one of us had fallen off at 50 or 60 miles an hour. Okay, what the hell were we thinking? This was one of the wilder things I did as a teenager. I was actually a pretty tame kid as a teenager. I had a little bit of a smart-ass mouth on me. I can't imagine that. Nobody who's listening to the podcast can imagine me being sarcastic. But, yeah, I don't know what we were doing. What were we doing on the roof of my car in the rain on a slippery road? Because it wasn't a high-quality macadam road like you had out to the highway. It was tarred chip. And, I don't know what the hell we were doing. We had a blast doing it, and I know we did it on more than one occasion. But we did it. And, I'm honestly surprised neither of us wrecked the car. And that's how I'm going to use this as a segue, because if I'd wrecked the car, I would have been in the market for a new one. And now we're going to talk about how a dealership that I've been loyal to for 20 years just lost me as a customer this morning. I'm not going to name the dealership until Monday, if I hear from them. I have gone on their website and said that I had something I wanted to say about their sales department, and that if they wanted to know the details, that they would call or email. And I left them my phone number and the hours at which I can be reached. That's part of the test, is to see whether or not they'll actually call me at the appropriate time. Okay? A lot of my interactions with other human beings, I'm testing them, engaging them. I really am. I'm bad about that. I guess I've been crapped on by people so many times that everything I do is a test of their morality and their loyalty. And maybe I shouldn't do that, but I got to level with y'all. Y'all ain't very predictable, but y'all ain't very reliable. So as long as y'all are going to be, like that, I'm going to have to keep checking on you. As Ronald Reagan said, there's a Russian proverb, trust but verify. So here's the story. And basically what we're going to call this is how to lose a customer. And sometimes it can be very simple, and maybe I'm overreacting, but I don't give a shit anymore, because I am a customer and I expect to be treated with at least a modicum of courtesy and respect. And here's where they lost me. So I'm supposed to get my car oil change today at 1 p.m. local. At the time I tell you this, it's 3:47 p.m. It's all been taken care of, and I'm back from the dealership, obviously. Well, at 9:56 a.m., now again, I'm worthless before 10, and it's like flipping a switch. At 10 a.m., it's like my brain turns on. Before 10 a.m., well, I answered the phone at 9:56. I saw the number ring. It's stored in my phone as car dealership, because that's who I call when I want to do oil changes, because when we bought the car that we have, we included in the sale price oil changes for the life of the car. Okay? Because, made it a little easier, so on and so forth. And I got to level with you, I don't like Jiffy Lube. I don't like Jiffy Lube. There are places like it that are okay. I had a friend from childhood who used to change my oil, but he charged me $26 one day just to replace a single windshield wiper, and at that point, he lost my business forever. But we'll move on, and I'm not naming him because I still consider him a friend. I just refuse to do business with him because we played Little League together. We go back to the age of 4, and there are certain things I'll allow and certain things I won't. And one of them is for him to do anything for me for money ever again. Anyway, so 9:56 a.m., my phone rings. I'm just about to engage the mechanism. The brain is about to come on. Hello. Yeah, hi. Is this Dave? Yeah. Well, hi, I'm so-and-so from Automotive. Okay. I see you're bringing your car in for an oil change today. You have a 2020. Yeah. Well, I was wondering if you would be interested in us giving you, what we're doing is we're trying to increase our inventory of used vehicles, and I was wondering if you'd be interested in getting an appraisal on your car, and then we could maybe have you look at some new models. Basically, we have a very basic entry-level car because we have very basic entry-level needs. It's just the two of us now. And, you know, we've not needed a big vehicle since 2019. So in 2020, we bought a little car. It's a 4-seater. And here's the thing. Here's common sales tactics is what you're going to hear about next. Here's what they do. And those of you that have been at a car dealership even close to as often as I have are going to know that I'm right when I talk about this. Whenever you go to a car dealership, they're going to ask you several questions to see how much money they can get out of you. And the one that gets my goat the most is, well, what are you looking for in a payment every month? My response has always been, I'm looking for $1 a month, but I'm willing to negotiate. I'm not telling them. Because by the time they get around to offering me a car and we talk about the payments, by the way, anyone who's bought a car will notice this. It's not just because cars cost more as years go on. It's a tactic. Your new payment for your new car will always be more than your payment on your old car unless the one you're trading in is so incredibly more valuable than the new one that there's no way in hell they could justify having a higher payment. For instance, if you were to take a fully loaded F-350 in there that you just drove off the lot, traded in used for basically a 4 wheels and a seat, pregnant roller skate, miniature Ford subcompact, they're not going to be able to get that payment above what the payment was on the F-350. But in our case, what they were trying to do was get us to look at, what the salesman was trying to do this morning was get me to look at the next car up in the progression. Because that's the tactic. If I had that next car up in the progression, he would have wanted me to look at the one that was a step above that in the progression. Okay? Well, I told him no thank you. His response was, okay, click. He just hung up the phone. And I'm not crazy when I ask this, but where the hell did customer service and courtesy go? Where did they go? Whatever happened to being denied as a salesman? And I know of what I speak. I used to sell life insurance door to door. Okay? I know all about getting rejected as a salesman. But whenever I did get rejected as a salesman, you know what my comment was? Whenever somebody would slam the door on me like that, I would say, okay, well, thank you for your time. Have a good day. Bye-bye. And then I would hang up the phone. Not this prick. Okay, click. Well, the kid sounded like he was a late year millennial, probably 28 to 30 years of age. And he didn't get his baby way, so he hung up on a loyal customer who's been buying cars from that dealership quite possibly since before his stupid ass was born. But he didn't get the answer he wanted, so he hung up on a customer. And that's why, if I do hear back from them, somebody's going to get an earful because I'm not going to do business with them anymore. Now, for some context, we bought our first car there in around the year 2000 when my wife and I were not long married, and my wife alone has bought 7 cars from them. I've bought 3 or 4. We've also bought 1 car or more each for our 2 sons. So you're looking at roughly a dozen automobile sales over a 25-year period, which is a car every 2 years. And that's a significant number of automobiles. If I live to be 500 years old, I will never darken the doorway of their showroom again. I will go to the service department because I've already paid for the oil changes that they're giving me. But I will never deal with that dealership again. And this is whether or not anyone ever does call or contact me to try to find out what happened. I honestly don't think I'll hear from them. And if I don't hear from them by the time I go to this podcast Monday, I'm naming names. Because, hell, I don't get that many listeners anyway, so who gives a shit? And in any event, I don't, whether I had 1 million or just one. Because there's something in customer service that I learned from my friend Rich, the one that was doing crazy crap with me on Elks Lodge Road, because he worked at this dealership at one point. So not only did I learn some of their tactics from the customer standpoint, excuse me, not only did I learn some of the tactics that salespeople use from a customer standpoint, I learned them from the salesman's standpoint, because he told me all the sneaky little dirty tricks they do. Like when they're offering you a payment on a car, they'll offer you 3 payments. One that's slightly above your current payment, one that's about $50 above that, and then another one that's maybe 75 or 100 above that, to see which one you'll bite on, because the whole point is to lock you in for as much as possible. Okay? Granted, that's the whole point of it, and that's how capitalism works, and so on and so forth. But there's some very sneaky, dishonest shit they do. For instance, they will look at your car, get the make, model, year, and possibly the VIN, run it online, get an estimated value of it, lowball the hell out of you on the trade, because they're trying to make money there too. Offer you financing at such and such a rate, and unless they're offering 0% financing, they make money on the financing. For instance, if the loan is set at 2%, they'll offer it to you at 3.9, because somewhere in that interchange, they'll make money on what they call their buy rate for their financing versus the rate that they actually charge the customer. Okay? They hit you with 3 payments that are all higher than what you're currently paying. They lowball you on the trade. They dick around with you on the condition of your car. One time a guy tried to tell me that I had hail damage on one spot of the roof of my car, when in the time I owned that car, we had never had hail. We've had salesmen say, well, look here, you bought this vehicle used. You see this bolt here isn't attached? That means that they've replaced the whole front end. This whole truck got the front end ripped off in an accident. They replaced it and didn't tell you. I can't give you full value for this trade. Suffice it to say, that son of a bitch in Annapolis was lying his ass off, and we ended up getting a deal on something somewhere else. Okay? Car salesmen, to me, are only slightly more popular than chlamydia. And with what they've done to me today, yeah, maybe I'm overreacting because he hung up on me. But you know what? Have some fucking courtesy. You didn't get the answer you wanted, but you risk sabotaging a 25-year business relationship by simply being a rude little shit and hanging up the phone. You can't just say thank you for your time. You can't. You're not man enough. You didn't learn the words. They didn't teach you that in salesman asshole school. Okay, well, guess what? You've lost me forever. And there's another little thing that I learned in sales from my friend Rich, the car salesman. This is where I got off track. Sorry. It's called the 7 friends theory. In sales, if you do well with someone and they like the transaction, someone who's a happy customer, basically, will tell 7 of their friends. Someone who's an unhappy customer will tell everyone they know. Well, guess which I am right now. Okay? I'm not just talking to 7 people. So, and again, if they don't respond promptly, well, when I walked through the showroom to look for the salesman that we've interacted with for 25 years, who's a decent enough fellow as salesmen go, he wasn't at his desk, and not a single person so much as lifted their head to acknowledge my existence when I walked into the showroom. So, yeah, customer service is apparently a thing of the past. Plus, you know, when they change your oil at a car dealership, they put the little paper mat down where the gas and brake pedal are, you know, so they don't get their grease-covered feet all over your floor mats. Yeah, we did get one of them this time. I guess that was a cost-cutting measure. Those paper floor mats must be bankrupting the dealership. So all in all, I had a very unsatisfying customer service moment with them today. The customer service guy in the service department was pleasant enough, and he did his job very well. But I can tell you right now, I wouldn't piss on the sales staff if they were on fucking fire. Actually, that's not true. I would piss on them if they were on fire, but when I got done, they'd still be on fire. So that is the end of our anecdotal evidence portion. That's how you lose a customer. It can be a little thing. You have to have a little courtesy. It's not hard. Manners don't cost money. But not having them will. And in this case, they have. So to good Ford, you. Okay? We won't be dealing with you anymore. And I don't want an apology. I don't want anything for it. I don't want compensation. Nope. All I ever wanted out of the whole situation was acknowledgement, and your salesman couldn't do that. So if you're the guy who trained him, I'm sure as hell, whoever I would talk to, I sure as hell ain't going to trust you to do it either. But now, we got a couple of jokes to tell. First one's got a dirty word in it, but you've already heard a couple, so whatever. A man from Manhattan decides to retire and live the quiet country life, and he moves into the Shenandoah Valley in West Virginia. And it's a quiet pastoral land. Turns out he's got a neighbor who lives just a couple hundred yards away. And the neighbor comes over right after the moving truck departs. Says, "Hey there, you my neighbor?" "Yep, yeah, just moved in. Nice to meet you. I'm Steve." "Well, Steve, I'm Billy." "Hi, Billy. Listen, we gonna have a party Saturday night. I was wondering if you'd be interested in coming on over." "Well, sure. Love to meet the new neighbors." "All right, great. But listen, I want to warn you. Where you from?" "I just moved here from New York City." "Oh, all right. Well, listen, we shoot guns around here. There's gonna be some gun shooting. Just so you know, you're gonna hear it. Even if it ain't at the party, we're gonna shoot some guns." He's like, "Okay, that's no problem. My dad was a cop. I fired a gun a few times." "All right, great. Well, listen, we gonna have some barbecue, and we gonna be a lot of drinking. I'm just telling you now, we gonna do a lot of drinking." "Okay, no problem. I drink. That's not a big deal. I'm looking forward to tasting what you got." "All right, that's good. And listen, it's a possibility that during the party, a fight's gonna break out. It happens." "Okay, well, I'll be on my guard." "Yeah, well, you know how it is. Somebody start having a little bit too much drink and won't try to pick a fight about somebody. Anyway, and also, just so you know, it's probably going to be a little bit of fucking." "Oh, okay. How many people are coming to this party?" "Oh, well, I'm just having you over." There you go. Time for joke number 2. The man who could talk to animals. There was once a man who had the Dr. Dolittle thing going on, and he swore up and down he could talk to animals. Well, to prove his point, he went to a farm one day in Scotland, and he had it on television, live TV, or I forget if this was during the days of internet streaming, but we'll say it was a live TV broadcast. And the TV crew went with him to Scotland, and he went to the McDougall farm. "Hello, I'm Joe Thompson, and I can speak to animals. How are you?" "I'm Connor McDougall. How are you? It's great to meet you." I says, "Well, Mr. McDougall, I was wondering if you wouldn't mind if I spoke to your animals. We're doing a TV show about it, and I want to show people my ability." "Talk to the animals? Are you daft? I don't believe it. Go ahead and try. I want to see that." Well, the man walks over to the dog. He's got a beautiful Irish setter. Says to the dog, "Well, hello there, puppy. You're an adorable little thing. How are you?" And the puppy says, "Oh, I'm great. I love it here. I've got a place to roam. They put me practically in charge of all the animals. And, oh, goodness, the food is wonderful. And I've got such a view. Look at the view. Look at the mountains. It's wonderful here." And, well, the Scotsman is taken aback. I cannot believe it. "Oh, wow. And the dog even speaks with a Scottish accent. I guess that's how we raised him, right? Oh, wonderful." Well, then the man who can speak to animals goes over to the horse. "Surely a horse can't talk to a man." "Oh, but he can. Watch." "Hello there, Mr. Horse. What's your name?" Oh, my name is Lightning. How are you? It's so good to talk to a human. I didn't know that anyone would bother wanting to try. He says, oh, well, some people know how to do it, and it's just a matter of saying the right thing. Well, I tell you, it's good. It's good. So how are you? What's it like being a horse on this farm? Oh, it's wonderful. He puts me on a wagon every now and then. I get to pull him into town and to show off the wagon. He's got a beautiful wagon, and the chickens get out of the way when I walk around. And look at the pastures. I've got meadows, hectares and hectares of land I can look around in and eat the grass and enjoy myself. And I've got a mare I can mount whenever I want. It's wonderful living here. I love it. I absolutely love it. Well, the man that can talk to animals says, that's wonderful. I'm glad to hear this from you. And he feeds the horse a carrot, and he turns around and walks toward the other end of the pasture. And suddenly the Scotsman yells out, don't talk to the sheep! He's a fucking liar! And that's going to wrap things up for the day. I hope you've had an enjoyable experience, unlike mine with a local car dealership this morning. Make sure to follow this show on Twitter. The handle is at the WSPD Podcast. On TikTok, it's WSP Dragons. More stuff's coming there. Not enough time in the day, as I've said before, even when I had that period where I wasn't sleeping. I have been sleeping lately. Hooray! I've had 2 straight days where I've gotten 6 or more hours of sleep. So tomorrow, if I wake up after 6, that's what we call a streak. So root for me. I'm hoping I can sleep better. I've also talked to the doctor, and I've got a prescription of something that'll help me sleep waiting at the pharmacy. Just got to pick it up. I forgot to do that today. I went right through the town where that pharmacy is. But anyway, you can help sponsor us through our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/WSP Dragons. You can join us there. You can also help us upgrade our equipment and pay our operating expenses via Cash App and Venmo. At both, it's WSPD Pod. And as always, you can hear us on Spotify where we began. Please follow us there, as well as, of course, iHeartRadio, Audible, and Amazon. On YouTube, we are the WSPD Podcast. We're going to be putting up some live stuff there soon. I've been doing some experimenting with things and been doing some trial balloons and then deleting them. So there is nothing on the account right now to note except for a couple of shorts from a while back. I'm still, testing stuff out. Like I said, I'm not incredibly tech savvy, but we're getting there. Give it time. We're growing. We're doing better. We hit 500 podcast streams and downloads recently, and I want to thank everybody who did that. Next stop is to get it to 1,000 total, and then I can hopefully get some listeners in larger numbers, grow the account more, and become, a little bit more of a thing, because I'm trying to offer solutions to problems, not just complain about them. Like, for instance, I think the Pope needs to read a Bible, and I think Trump needs to blow the IRGC straight to hell where they belong. And that the Orioles need to throw the ball, hit the ball, and catch the ball, as that wonderful man said in the movie Bull Durham. But for now, we're going to sign off. Hope everybody has a great weekend. We will talk again on Monday. In the meantime, again, Chapter 8 of Love's Crucible is up on the Patreon page. Check us out. For just $3 a month, you can read new novels as they come. There are over 20 of them in the pipeline. It will definitely be an experience. So thanks again for your time. This is Dave the Nerd Emperor signing off. Have a great weekend. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.